Gents, focusing now on the Champions League. Let's rank some of the teams and favourites and what we've seen from week one, match day one, around Europe. And I guess what did we learn, Nick Mendola, from this opening round of Champions League games? Any lessons or anything that really stuck in your mind from this opening round of matches? Because there were some upsets. There were some performances within games that were quite surprising as well. But what was your main takeaway from match day one in the new Champions League group stage season?
That it all comes out in the sauce in the end in this competition. And it granted, we do see surprises. Remember Real Madrid getting surprised last year, but for the most part, if they're in a game late, they're going to find a goal.
Yeah.
Man City's going to find a way to win. Performances are going to be rewarded, as we saw even in a big matchup between PSG and Dortmund. I thought that it was a reminder of hierarchy. In a world where we see a lot of a soccer world where we see a lot of tumult and surprises on a week-to-week basis, especially as the Premier League has gotten so top to bottom in quality, that when the big boys come out, oftentimes the big boys win. And honestly, that was a little refreshing. It was kind of nice to see that we've got favorites still.
Andy, what was your big takeaway, mate?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on Nick's point. There are levels to this. There's a hierarchy that does exist, and it's nice because we've had some teams make some runs deep into the Champions League in recent seasons, but it feels like now, and maybe we'll see at the end of the season, but it feels like now some of the bigger clubs in this competition especially have kind of figured out how to operate themselves in the meantime and to put together a full squad and to really be solid. And I think we had a period where Barcelona was down, and we'll see what PSG turns into because of obviously all the players that have left there. They've still got Mbappe, and now he gets to actually be the man, whether he wants to be there or not at this point. So I'm going to be curious. And there will be one or two teams that will obviously get into the round of 16, maybe even the quarterfinals. But it feels like we're pushing back towards, and we've seen it in the Premier League where the top 6 and now 7 teams have kind of separated themselves a little bit more from everybody else in the pack. Are we going to see that in the Champions League is kind of the big thing that I'm keeping my eye on this season.
The big thing I just kind of take away, again, it might be obvious, but it's the star players at those big teams. It's Mbappe at PSG, it's Haaland at Man City, it's Lewandowski at Barcelona, Jude Bellingham at Real Madrid, just absolutely incredible start to the season, and Harry Kane at Bayern Munich. When you look at those teams I mentioned there, I think they kind of generally separate themselves from the pack because of those star players in big moments deliver, and we kind of saw that a lot throughout week one. So yeah, we love upsets galore, don't we? But I think now we're starting to see the best teams just collect the best players in their prime and get the best players around them. And yeah, there's a good team building unit, like you guys have said there, in terms of big clubs figuring it out. There's been a few years of hurt for some of them, but they just kind of figured it out now. Nick, Premier League teams didn't quite figure it out. Well, we had a couple of wins, a draw, and a defeat for the 4 of those in action. Who will be the happiest after the first round of action? I guess it would be Arsenal, right? Getting back in the big time for the first time in 6 years and having a very comfortable 4-0 home win against PSV where they're very, very impressive. But there was, some other good stuff for Premier League teams, even though it was a mixed bag of results.
Yeah, I don't want to cheat because who will be happiest? Yeah, it's Arsenal followed by Man City, and then next it's, the team that drew, and then last is the team that lost. But I think the talking point and who should maybe be the happiest, sneaky happy, might be Manchester United, because I think it could have gone very, very, very poorly for them. And for a while, it looked like it might. But to go through this team and kind of, honestly, if I'm Erik ten Hag going through this incredibly crazy time, and I'm like, I've got to go to Bayern Munich, and I don't have the guy that I bought in the midfield to partner with Casemiro, and I don't have one of the best center backs of his era, if not all time, and Rafa Varane. Luke Shaw, and to come out 4-3. Yeah, I think I take that, especially given the alternative, because they could have lost 4-1, had to lean on those examples, and still been like, yeah, bro, but you haven't won in how long? So honestly, I know it might sound cheating, but I think there's a relief around Manchester United today.
Yeah, I agree with you. They created a lot of chances if you watch that game as well. They, Bayern defended
Well,
well.
scoring, yeah.
Yeah. It was. But then Bayern were just toying with them in the second half as well, kind of a bit bored. So it was. We said it before. That was the hardest game in the group stage for Man United. Out the way first, get it done. And now, no disrespect to Galatasaray and Copenhagen, but you'd expect them to get a couple of wins against those teams in the group and still go through as group runners up, and that still be successful. But yeah, I kind of think they got away with it a little bit, and they'll just be relieved, like you said, Nick. But Arsenal, for me, got to be the happiest because a lot of those players haven't played in the Champions League before, so it's kind of uncharted territory for them. A decent first game for them to play against. Again, PSV obviously coming through the qualifying rounds, but I think Arteta will be very, very happy with that indeed. Andy, in terms of looking at the favourites overall, have we changed our minds at all? I know we picked Man City, most of us, right? Can't remember exactly who you guys picked. I know I had Man City repeating, but Bayern Munich, I guess, were impressive apart from some of the defensive errors that they made against United. But anybody else change your mind or any kind of early changing in your ranking of the favourites to win it all?
No, I wouldn't say with regards to win it all. It still looks like City going to be the cream of the crop, and Bayern, depending on, and obviously Harry Kane has fit in very well early on, how healthy they stay over the course of the season. And I think also an underrated storyline with them this year to keep an eye on is how happy do they remain under Thomas Tuchel? Because there's been a little bit of unhappiness at some recent stops for him in his career, and he maybe rubs some people the wrong way. And so if things go bad for a couple of weeks, does it get really bad really quickly? Because that's kind of the MO for Thomas Tuchel's teams. But if he can keep that ship together, I think they're going to be there at the end of it. To wrap up on your point about United, guys, that's as good as it's going to get, though, for Manchester United in the Champions League. Like, yes, they acquitted themselves well and they didn't get embarrassed and they got a couple late goals and they made the score look good. But that's the best they can hope for at this point. And that, I think, says, I mean, if you disagree, let me know.
I do.
But
yeah, I really do.
What have we seen from them obviously in a decade now that says that there is any kind of plan or improvement or progression coming from them? It feels like every game that they play is completely random and unrelated and unattached to everything else that they have going on. And that result right there, whether it's 4-1, whether it's 4-3, whether it stays 2-1 without all the late goals for both teams and it kind of getting out of hand late, it feels very random with them.
Yeah, but it's Bayern. They were playing one of the favourites away from home. So I think we have to give them a little bit of slack.
Well, they'll beat the lesser teams that they should beat. But when they come up against any team that we talk about in this conversation of, well, who could actually win this? Yeah,
look, they're not casting aside. I don't think you got to measure them, decide what measuring stick you're using, I think. Because I'm not looking at them as, of course, I think we all agree with this. And maybe this is your measuring stick. They're not a contender to win the Champions League. But I look at, again, not that the players missing are going to fix everything immediately, but I think they're markedly improved. I think they're comfortably out of the group. And I don't think there's a team out there that wants to draw them in the knockout rounds based on that. They still have a lot of fixing to do. January will, of course, get here too before the knockout rounds. And I don't think anyone's looking at them and saying you're going to miss if Højlund works out, right? The problem right now is that the Ten Hag era has shown some glimpses of being every other era. It didn't look that way last year, and I don't want to forget that. I really don't want to forget that because we are only 6 weeks into a season, as troubling as that season might look right now.
Yeah, a lot of key players come back from injuries, and then I feel like last season, it took them a while to get going. Erik ten Hag's system, new players, etc. Yeah, I think it will calm down a little bit, United, and they'll get out the group and then see what happens, and a lot can change. Focusing on match day 2, though, lads, some big games coming up. A couple to keep our eye on. Napoli hosting Real Madrid, which is going to be huge. And in Newcastle's group, every game is huge, but they host Paris Saint-Germain at St. James's Park, which is going to be a massive night for them. For the first time, a Champions League game is going to be at St. James's for over 20 years. So that's going to be one to mark on your calendar. And in that group, again, Dortmund hosting Milan is a big one. And then, yeah, I guess equally kind of as big for, like we mentioned before, Manchester United hosting Galatasaray. That is huge for them to get off the mark, get a win, and kind of state their claim as, all right, we might not win the group, but we're going to finish a comfortable second behind Bayern to set us up for the knockout round. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest Champions League news. We'll keep you covered. It's fun to have it back. Let's see how the Premier League teams get on and now kick on with those second round of games coming up. But already we're starting to see a few favourites emerge, and the stars are definitely shining around Europe to start the season.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.